this video is called Institutionalizing ICS, the Incident Command System, using training and exercise. We had to come up with a way to incorporate it into actual training and utilize it for actually coaching our management teams. What we developed was a way to incorporate the Incident Command System into managing the training and exercise environment. What you see behind me going on is a line dig evolution that is part of the Engine Academy. It's managed with an incident management team. It's evaluated with evaluators and coaches that help the incident management team in organizing the entire exercise. The incident management team that actually has started this process 6 months ago. You're witnessing something that has evolved over many years. We've worked through the wildland fire community to develop a realistic training and exercise environment where people actually get actual management training over a 2 or 3 day period. This Engine Academy is about that experience, and these folks are about part of that experience. Eventually, some of these folks will be involved in the actual management of this Engine Academy in the future, and some of them actually have been. Some of us actually go back to being on the trucks. This video, Institutionalizing the Incident Command System using training and exercise, will show you how you can do this in your training environment. I remember when we started these discussions at the beginning of how we could get better and get realism to the management stuff.
Right. It was really great. It must have been about 1998 when we did the I-300 class, and the graduation exercise broke out the people into different teams to give them something to actually do. And I was lucky to be on the team that decided to do an Engine Academy.
We've actually used this as a tool to get people through and get that training and experience.
Right.
And this is a large part of the training, with the realistic aspect of my experience with the Engine Academy, and as well as yours, and I know is this is the real thing. Every time we do this, we end up with something we have to deal with.
That's right.
This time we were talking about thunderstorms.
Right. Well, and the other thing is that a big part of all incident management, I think, is the documentation side of it, and to learn how to do that properly, and to produce a shift plan that has everything covered, and bringing all those players together. Again, that's something that interests me from my interest in the plans part of it. So I think that's a big learning process that you get by doing it. We do little exercises in the classes, but until you go and put things together in a deal like this, you really don't get it all put together.
That's right. So how do you get involved in putting together your incident command system training utilizing academies, training, and exercise? Let's talk to some of the folks involved in this Engine Academy. What we're trying to do with the Engine Academy is get a little more into the teeth of how to get actual experience involved in the training aspect. This is one aspect, and I've mentioned to you, we talked about someday maybe trying to do this with law enforcement.
You're exactly right. You know, we do trainings in our own area, whether it be weapons of mass destructions or hostage barricaded suspects or SWAT, but it all interacts. It's all the same. And utilizing incident command structure ties it all together. We're responding to fire calls, fire camps, evacuation. We have evacuation plans and packets put together. But do we ever pull them out occasionally and dust them off and look at them? No, not until it's time for a real incident. This gives us a chance to pull those out, pull out the CDs, pull out the.
We did that last night.
Exactly.
We did that at the when we were meeting with the county commissioners, and you and JJ got the evacuation stuff that you guys have worked on, put together, and he said, well, we'll just build it for this area.
Sure.
And we took and did that.
Welcome to the 2005 South Central Zone Engine Academy. You all got individualized IAPs. If you look in here, you're going to see a division assignment list. There's one for each event. It's going to tell you your evaluator up at the top, frequencies to use down below. And as you go through these, it'd be a good idea for training purposes is if you rotate through who's going to be leading your group, and you can kind of keep track of this through here, and any other notations you need to make you can use on this page. And the front of that's going to be the task force assignment, so if you're not sure who you're with already, you can check to that.
The first 3 years of the Engine Academy I did plans, and the first year I was a total basket case, didn't have a clue on what plans job was or anything. But it gave me a better understanding of how the structure of a fire works, and that someone actually does have to know what's going on all the time, and that's the plans person. They have to have their finger on the pulse of what every part of the fire is going on, and they run the briefings in the morning, and they get the IAP ready. They make sure that everybody's got their jobs done. And that really showed me that my medical job is just a step in the big chain here.
Well, the operations part of things, we're running 5 different events for the participants, and basically we're sitting here trying to make sure that the training's going along smoothly with the event coordinators. So a lot of our job is more logistical in nature as far as scheduling, making sure the event coordinators have what they need, and keeping things going as far as time.
This is my first time really at an Engine Academy, and so it's been really nice having someone who's been a part of this for a while to kind of show me the ropes as far as jumping in. And overall, it's been a great tool for me to step back or step up, depending on how you look at it. But to be in a different role, I spent most of my career, in the trenches and out actually doing the things that are being done today. And it's great for me to, as I gain experience and qualifications, to learn about changing roles and stepping into kind of an oversight position, which is what Pete's been working with me.
How's it feel from a realism standpoint? I mean, as a training environment, using this type of the Engine Academy itself as a training for the operations, are you getting a pretty good experience?
I think it's great because it's real world stuff. It's actually speaking with people, interacting, figuring out how they work and how we figure out how I work and dealing with that. So it's
similar real life decisions transitioned well into the management of a real incident.
Yeah, similar, lower stress, obviously, and that's good. I mean, that lends itself to a good learning environment to have less stress. But I mean, you get things like weather events and having to adjust. That adds a little bit of stress, which is also good.
I've worked in a lot of different areas of fire, but I've never really actually been in camps and worked with a team and stuff like that before. And it's amazing how you have to learn all the different facets of the overhead team, as well as be able to work with those who are very interested in filming and the public who wants to know more about the information about either the academy or an existing fire. And it's quite realistic from what those who have fought fire have told me. And so I'm learning lots, and I'm looking forward to actually getting on a fire in the future.
The Engine Academy evolved out of a practical exercise for ICS. We'd all done the tabletops and the what ifs, working through their classroom sessions, and those are okay. You learn some things from there, but you want to put the real pressure on. Closest thing to being in a real incident is managing an incident, and at least this way, we can control a lot of things, but we can't control the weather.
Well, and there's a lot of different things we've had over the years that have added to that environment, a number of different problems dealing with the public that are pretty typical. The interesting thing is we moved the Engine Academy on a yearly basis, and that challenge of moving it to different locations is what adds to that realism.
The great advantage of moving it every year, even though it is a lot more work to do that, is that there's some of the smaller communities that don't have the resources or can't afford for the resources to be gone from the home area. By us moving the incident or the Engine Academy to their location, then they get the feel and the taste, and they have the opportunity to come play and participate in there. And from the other aspect of the other folks is we get to see other country, other territory before an incident happens. And safety, of course, is one of our biggest concerns, first, last, and always. So I took the step up to become trained to be a safety officer, and Fred Jones is my coach, along with a couple other sub-coaches here. So we've always, from the Engine Academy, always had fully carded people at the incident working in the coaching positions. We're still, our number one goal out of the Engine Academy is training incident management. That's the biggest. The secondary is the interaction with your neighbors and seeing and working with them before the incident. And then when the incident does happen, we've seen great gains on the ground, and primarily from the safety aspect.
Dan's with the National Weather Service. He's our incident meteorologist for the Engine Academy. And we just went through this little exercise talking about the weather. You gave a pretty good forecast. Everybody said right on. And that's always something to honor in weatherman, is giving them the credit for being right on. But the important part is the safety aspect you provided for the Engine Academy. And you've done this a couple years, over the years, and we've worked together on fires. Tell us a little bit about what your job is here and how you've tied in and how it helps you with your relationship in the management structure.
Well, the primary job of the meteorologist when they're on site is to provide specific support to an incident. You know, anybody can go out and get a forecast that the public would be using, which is mostly sunny, high temperature of 80 degrees, maybe some winds out of the southwest, chance of afternoon thunderstorms. Well, when you've got a lot of moving pieces, when you've got a lot of people exposed in the outdoors like you do on a fire or on an Engine Academy, those answers may not be good enough. What time? 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, how soon do we have to change a plan? Yeah, you said rain, but are we talking a tenth of an inch or a quarter of an inch? Do we need to start thinking about how we're going to shelter people? Do we need to shut down activities because the roads may get slick? Or are we worried about people getting struck by lightning? So the meteorologist who's on an incident, whether it's a wildfire or an Engine Academy like this, gets very tied into the specific safety concerns expressed to him by the incident management team and what sort of things they're looking for him to give them in terms of information and also confidence level. You know, it may be a 30% chance of showers, and the team may say what's your worst case scenario, what's your most likely scenario, so they can develop a set of contingencies as they see the weather conditions develop, and they can play things out scenario by scenario, especially if they've got trigger points to make decisions on things happening, such as releasing a helicopter or making sure everybody gets to the vehicles and shutting down their activities.
Which is exactly what just happened. You guys sat down and made a decision, and some major decisions as far as when you were going to set some of those benchmarks and trigger points.
When we first started out, it was a new concept, and there was a lot of things happening that are no longer happening. I think we've made some good changes. What I spoke to you earlier about today was, I think it was the second year that we did this academy. I was operations, and it didn't seem like we really followed the ICS structure like we are today. And it didn't seem to run as a normal wildland event would normally run. And today we're running exactly like an event would be. We've got everybody in place. We've got the IAP in place, and it's an excellent training tool for us. All the way from the new folks on the engines who have never been to a large event to folks who are seasoned and just quite don't have a handle on the particulars.
How is it related to the classroom experience, the type of stuff that we typically do when this is on the ground? Tell us a little.
Well, I think that, at least for myself, I'm a hands-on learner. And we can sit in a classroom and we can talk about things and you can think about things, but when you're thrust into a position, as I have as the IC, all of a sudden I've made it my business. I sat down and I wanted to understand what plans did. I wanted to understand what logistics did. And of course I learned those things in a classroom, but it doesn't hit home as hard as it does when all of a sudden you're actually responsible for those positions. Whether you're fulfilling that role or as the IC, I need to know what they're all doing and making sure they're doing their job. So for me, this year has been a tremendous boom for me in my learning curve.
Good morning. I'm Brett Waters. I'm the Fire Chief of the Belgrade and Central Valley Fire District and President of the Montana County Fire Wardens Association. We're here today at the Last Chance 1 exercise in Helena, Montana. This is a training exercise and an evaluation of emergency response and preparedness that deals with bioterrorism, mass casualties, hazmat response, emergency operations, hostage taking, and exercises multiple agencies, local, state, and federal agencies' response to that such of an event.
You and I have been involved in this stuff for 10 years and managing this stuff. To me, it's one of the better training for management teams. We've been 10 months doing this, putting this exercise together. We're talking about mass casualty. We're talking about hazardous materials. We're involved with civil support teams from the National Guard. Both from Montana and Idaho was gracious enough to come over and simulate some of Montana's to give them some skills training. We've got the special weapons teams from law enforcement, and we've also got a bioterrorism element from public health and human services that involves something like 60 different either hospitals or public health departments involved in this exercise. It's a massive task. As you can see, with all the people we've got involved, we've got probably in the hundreds as far as numbers of people just to put this on. That's not the people that are responding. That's just to get the exercise conducted over this 5-week period. 10 months of putting it together. We use the incident command system as a training tool and also as a tool for managing the exercise design. And that's been very good for us. We've had good control. We've been able to check in everybody, track our responders. We've got a pretty good area for observers to come. We've got good media attention because of that. It's been an excellent element for us to really conduct this exercise. And in the past, when we've done the engine academies, we've used the same techniques, and I think they've been very successful, both for training the management teams and also for involving the folks that are doing the evolutions.
So how do we get started using ICS to manage an incident or an exercise? We'll talk with some of the key personnel that are part of the Last Chance 1 exercise.
Work with the NIMS documents and processes and procedures, and then work on a gap analysis that described what NIMS compliance looks like and Unified Command looks like as a best practice from our industry, and assess the Unified Command, the participants in the Unified Command of Last Chance 1 to understand how they did what they did and how that compares to best practices in the industry, including NIMS. When we look at incident management systems as a whole, and the ICS in particular, there's really 2 levels of success that I see here, at least 2 levels, and that's in the present sense. One is the incident management processes that are being used in the overall management of the training exercise. We'll kind of call that the training or exercise command system. And then the actual command systems that are being used by the disciplines to actually manage the response within the exercise. So really on at least 2 levels, very successful. And honestly, when you look at that, when we all look at that, we say we're gonna work up to our capacity to manage our own systems. And in both cases here, with the exercise command team and then the command team that is evolving among the responders, they're doing excellent work because they're very good at using that incident management system to help run what they're doing for their work.
Well, we started approximately 10 months ago. We wanted to do an exercise where we could test not only law enforcement but also the combined efforts of hazmat, fire department, all the different agencies working together in case we did have a weapons of mass destruction incident or one that we thought was occurring here in the Helena area. We started doing the planning on this, like I said, about 10 months ago. We had meetings on normally a monthly basis, and then we cut it down to like every 2 weeks, and then finally here lately to every week, so we make sure we can cover all the different aspects that were going to be necessary to get this accomplished. And it's been real valuable for law enforcement because we're going, in an incident of this nature, if it is a weapons of mass destruction, we're going to have a lot of involvement in not only in site security but in evidence collection. It'll involve working coordinating our work with the FBI, the fire departments, the hazmat teams, also CST. Currently it's out of Idaho, but we're getting a team set up here in Montana. So it's going to involve a lot of coordination between those agencies to actually get the mission accomplished. And right now, what we're doing is we're having certain members of our law enforcement team here in the Helen area working with the incident command, and it's a unified command, so that they can all work together and learn what parts of this needs to be done to get this properly handled. It's been going real good. I've taken 3 different members of our department and their commanders, and we're putting them into the role, into the IC in the Unified Command, and see if they're thinking on their feet on what's necessary for planning for the future and dealing with that event. Because one thing we got to keep in mind, and sometimes we forget in these incidents, real world doesn't stop. Everything else is going on. We've got our responsibility to the rest of the citizens, and their lives are going on. And even though we have this event, we have to deal with the other items. So I want to make sure our commanders realize that and are not just focusing on this one incident, because other things are going on. And then how they work together, we're checking with the other disciplines to make sure they're working as a team to get this mission accomplished.
We're finally at a level where the incident command system is being recognized as the tool to incident management. Realizing that when incident command was developed, it was a fire tool. It was to be able to have command control, to be able to manage resources, to be able to manage people, accountability, leadership. So where it evolved from now to, and through largely through the fire service and practice, to realize that when it was created, what the overall benefits of an incident management system would be, and then incident command being the tool of choice in order to facilitate that. The fear has always been, and now I think is less of a problem and has been minimized over time. It isn't about command. It's about how we facilitate and we are able to coordinate our abilities in mutual aid or in multi-jurisdictional events to fulfill our missions. And when leaders understand that, it isn't about command anymore, it's how we get the job done to the benefit of the citizens in either a jurisdiction or multi-jurisdictions.
ICS is showing us that there are more efficient ways that we can collect that data and display that data and provide some overall management to the situation that we have.
The main function of that operations section and the design piece is actually putting the exercise together, the nuts and bolts of all the little minutia pieces to make the thing run, the scenarios. I guess the best way to put it, our job is to design it to where we can meet the objectives of the exercise. The ICS, molding us into an ICS mold was, I think, really critical, because we were kind of stumbling when we initially started this, because we didn't have a good management structure overseeing it. And when we moved to put it into an ICS structure, it just fit, and it really moved us along and got us targeted where we needed to be. I think that's the biggest thing when you get into exercise design. One of the mistakes we made is we didn't sit down initially and with a small core group and decide what are our objectives, what are we doing, and instead we brought in a big group of folks and then tried to do it by committee. The biggest challenge was we've got 2 independent exercises running simultaneously, and most of the folks here don't see what's going on with the Bravo phase, the biological piece of the exercise, because that's going on at 4 different hospitals throughout the state, as well as 56 or 57 local health jurisdictions. So trying to balance those 2, let them run independently but manage them centrally was, and again, that's why the ICS worked so well, because it gave us the structure and the chain of command to manage that thing, because this is a really complicated exercise.
Initially, we started out thinking a little too small.
in that I was assigned as a unit leader for the emergency management function of the exercise. Once we took a look at what was really involved, the plans chief made the decision that for span of control reasons, I needed to be the evaluation group supervisor. And as such, we had an emergency management unit. We had our Bravo unit, which was essentially public health. We had a Charlie unit, which was our hazmat response. We had a law enforcement unit. And also, I guess you could say that I had an interface responsibility with the control unit, although I didn't supervise them directly. So from ICS, for span of control, I had 4 people that I have to supervise. And then we got a little creative in our thinking. We didn't establish a unit, but we requested a single resource, who was Brian Crandall, to come in and evaluate NIMS. So my span of control is 5. One of the things that we recognized right off was there was this thing called the Homeland Security Exercise Evaluation Program, which identified a number of objectives and things of this nature that the Department of Homeland Security would like for us to do in an exercise. At that point in time, the incident commander stepped in and says, let's take a look at what we're really doing here. We have goals and objectives that we've established as part of the exercise. They are going to drive our exercise, not this. And lo and behold, we figured out we were making a mountain out of a molehill, because the things that are in here mesh very closely with what we came out of, or what we determined as a group. Actually, I guess I would say is what the team determined for goals and objectives. So there wasn't an issue. We thought there was, but there's not.
I started developing the scenario with Colonel Shields that we went through today, probably back in December sometime, I suppose. We started talking about what we wanted for a scenario to test everybody. How would that look? How would it work? And the scenario for Charlie started to take on a life of its own, separate from what we had for public health. And so we recognized in the overhead team that we were really going to have 2 separate incidents. Initially, we talked about having one large, full-scale incident, trying to pull all of this stuff together, and we just realized it would just be too much. That the answer was probably to have simultaneous exercises going on at the same time. And the more and more we talked about that, the more we realized it would even be more effective to do little pieces each day, like we ended up doing. So even though this was a continuous event over the last couple of days here, the idea was that in real time it was a continuous event of the plane coming down, the casualties being treated, and the hazmat teams arriving and taking over. The biggest thing I found was being involved with the scenario as an exercise designer and being the logistics chief was just too much.
It's just like sports or anything else, you know, the more you practice, the better off you are when you have to really go do it. And like I said, again, we've worked real hard to make sure that we have a good relationship with our first responders, specifically the hazmat teams, because they're going to be there first. And they know what they can do, they know what we can do. And
I think probably some of the largest challenges happens to be the incident time piece, making sure that we have crew members and overhead team members get in their time correctly and on time so we can get it posted, because in all actuality the finance section really doesn't go to work. Should I say the time piece doesn't go to work until almost at the end of the day, operational period, because we get the timesheets in. Now we've got to start posting all the time. The cost piece, of course, is constant throughout the exercise or throughout the incident. Make sure that if we're procuring items and claims.
Well, I was the public information officer for this exercise. I handled overall public information, media relations for Operation Last Chance 1. We had several components of the exercise that we were responsible for, and I actually had a team put together in order to do that. We had 2 media teams. One was to capture the exercise. The other one was to capture functional elements of the exercise, so we can do continuing programs following the exercise and capture some of those elements, so we can delve deeper into the details and help the public understand exactly what it was we did. We also had a lot of public tours and then we also had a lot of media present at this particular exercise, and we provided personalized supports to each one of those media. Because it was so complicated, it was really important for us to have those people there with them, to step them through what was going on and explain to them all the processes and explain all the external stuff that was going on, so they could help put that big picture together. And in addition, we just had us run around helping people, communicating information back and forth to the operations center at the state and the local emergency coordination center at Lincoln Park County. I think one of the things that I'm most proud of for this particular exercise is we really, really pushed public information. We really pushed that relationship with the media, and we did that because there were so many complicating factors. We wanted to make sure that they fully understood what was going on and that the public was actively involved.
My role in this has kind of been at least twofold. I started last August as co-chair, like I mentioned, to plan and manage this exercise, and then also too, I worked to design the exercise for Operation Last Chance 1 Bravo, pulled together an exercise design committee internally here at DPHHS last November. Each section came up with about 2 or 3 objectives, and then we've worked over the last 6 or 7 months to hone those objectives and work with HC for Homeland Security Exercise and Evaluation Program to get our evaluation tools. We also made sure to get our staff that would be involved in this exercise trained up on ICS. We went to FEMA's online IS 195 course. Then we did some more public health and ICS training internally, as well as a couple of tabletops before this exercise. Yesterday afternoon, we were able to use the other side of the room for a video conferencing aspect, where we linked in with 29 other hospitals via telehealth and MetNet and several other video conferencing capabilities to share information, share treatment regimens, as well as just project what's going on around the state.
All right, well, Bob, it looks like we've had a good exercise here with Last Chance 1.
Yeah, it's went well.
How's the kind of an overview? What do you think of how the whole evolution has went from the planning process to the culmination of the exercise this week?
10 months putting it together. You know, we wrestled over a lot of issues and making sure that we could tweak every aspect from the start of the mass casualty up through the emergency operations centers, the bioterrorism piece, the coordination center, the hazardous materials team, civil support teams, the FBI hazmat team that got added today, the SWAT teams from local government. And feels pretty good to feel like knowing after talking to folks that we were successful. And I know the incident command system had a large part to do with why we were structured appropriately and where we could actually give people a good exercise.
I think we've been able to prove through the planning process and the South Central Zone Engine Academy, as well as Last Chance 1 and exercises, that ICS works. And ICS is a great tool to use to manage a exercise, a training opportunity, as well as this is how we want to work together in the field on a real event.
What's next? And the next is we got to come up with funding, obviously, and we got to start the process of where do we go from here. We were fortunate to get quite a few teams, but if we don't have funding to do this on a regular basis, it's not circular in nature, but we want it to be circular in nature. As you and I know, we have law enforcement, search and rescue, EMS, fire, structure fire, wildland fire, and at some point we need to integrate those.
Being able to integrate multiple agencies from the federal side, state side, local side, private sector with the American Red Cross, and tying in the health department like we did, the hospitals this year on this exercise, it just shows that nobody can do it by themselves. We have to learn to work together, and Incident Command System allows us to be able to do that and manage things effectively. This gives us the opportunity to really see where we're at, give people a taste of what ICS is. And our next step is to go ahead and move forward with that, integrate more people that become familiar with ICS.